Hi, I'm really excited to bring this Christ Revealed interview to you. Let's go ahead and jump in. Now you've got my appetite whetted. What are the 6 facts?
What are the 6 facts? Well, to show you how versatile this group is, we change them. You go, why do you change them? Because nobody only gives us 6 facts.
Right.
The skeptics will say, I'll give you 20. I'll go, I don't need a 20. In my dissertation, I did a dozen. All right, well, I'll give you those dozen. I don't need a dozen. I only need a half dozen. So it's intriguing that I can get down to a real small number because, of course, the smaller number I get, the more scholars I'll get on board.
Right.
In this book right here, The Case for the Resurrection of Jesus, Mike Lacona and I, we have a chapter 4 called A Quintet of Facts, 4 plus 1. So we're doing 5 in this one. I've been doing 6 lately. But on that kind of a model, and I'll explain the plus 1, I would take Jesus died by virtue of crucifixion, and somebody says, what's that got to do with the resurrection? Well, not much, but you need a dead guy before you can talk about resurrection.
Okay.
So, secondly, and I'm wording this very carefully after years of reading the skeptics. I read the skeptics more than I read, believers. Jesus' disciples had real experiences that they believed were appearances of the risen Jesus. In other words, it's a simple way to say they really believe they saw Jesus alive after he was put in a tomb.
Okay.
That's 2. 3, their lives were transformed to the extent that they were willing to die for a lie. Now, sometimes critics are they're waiting for you to say this, and they go, prove they all died. Nope, I'm not going to play that game. I didn't say I could prove they all died. Although, by the way, the 4 most influential early Christians, James, the brother of Jesus, Paul, John, and Peter, we have first-century sources for the martyrdom of 3 of them. So the more important they get, the better our evidence is. That's interesting. But you can't prove the rest. You're going to have to go to 3rd and 4th and 5th century sources for rumors about martyrdoms. I can't prove that. But I can show that they were so transformed that they put themselves in position where they were willing to die. You go, how do you know? Because they went to towns, they were told to leave, and they didn't, and they kept preaching, and they were stoned. Things happened to people. James, the son of Zebedee now, he's killed. Herod kills him. Stephen is stoned. Now, he's not an apostle, but Stephen was stoned. So they were willing to die. Fourthly, this fact of the resurrection was taught very, very early. Critics think we can get all the way back. Critical scholars, agnostics, unbelieving scholars, atheists like Michael Goulder passed away, I think, not terribly long ago, but Michael Goulder, an atheist New Testament scholar, says the report of the resurrection can be traced back to no more than about 2 years after the cross. You go, well, 2 years when our earliest source gospel is Mark at plus 40? How do we get plus 2? Well, it takes some arguments. It takes a way to get the path back there. But we're doing the Yellow Brick Road in reverse now. We're going back to the cross. But if an atheist New Testament scholar says it's 2 years, you better believe he thinks he has some reasons because he doesn't believe that Christianity is literally true. So it was proclaimed very early. And then 2 skeptics. I think they're singular enough that I would separate them. Paul, the persecutor, and James, the brother of Jesus, who the Gospels tell us was an unbeliever when Jesus came to town, there in Mark chapter 3, and then again in John 7. They were unbelievers. I'd use those 6. Now, we use 5 here, and we say quintet. We say 4 plus 1. What's the plus 1? Well, there's more evidences for the empty tomb than any other fact. But the definition of our minimal fact is we will use no facts where the evidence don't just pile in. And secondly, as a result, the vast majority of scholars concede that fact. You go, what's vast majority to you? Well, I'm the guy that did the head count. When people say, how do you know the vast majority? I'll say, I counted. Did you? Because I went back and went from my dissertation to present, and I've got 1,200 pages of sources on where scholars are today. And it's at about the 90-something percentile on these 4.
Okay.
Empty tomb, when I was in grad school in the 70s, I'm just guessing, scholarship might have been at plus 20%. The empty tomb was not popular. Today, it's at about 75%. So it's come a long way, but it's not up in the 90-something realm. So we call the plus 1 is the more important thing. The evidence for the empty tomb is so good, but all scholars haven't conceded it yet, but we're getting the number. The number's going up. All right, how many evidences for the empty tomb? I said, I won't use any fact that doesn't have all these facts coming in on it. I gave a paper a few years ago at a scholarly conference that included 21 separate arguments for the empty tomb, and now I'm ready to add another one, 22. 22 arguments for the empty tomb. And here's what's incredible. It's not true because I pick up my Bible and I say, oh yeah, here's a verse. No, I can't get away with that. With these guys, I can only use it if those are critically given. All 22 are critically ascertained. If I have 22 evidences for something, that's way better than almost anything in the ancient world. So we stick it on there as a 4+1. It deserves to be in the list by the evidence, which is by far the most important. There's a little lag time on how many people believe in it. So those are the ones I would use. I would say those 6. I would say 6+1. The crucifixion. They had experiences they thought were the risen Jesus. Their lives were transformed to the point that they were willing to die. It was proclaimed very early, 1 to 2 years later. James and Paul, 2 skeptics, and the +1 is the empty tomb.
So when you put those together, the conclusion is, what's more plausible than Jesus was resurrected?
And they're going to probably come back and say, what's more plausible, planet Earth or Narnia? And I'd say, I'm glad you said that. Let's talk about Narnia. Let's talk about near-death. A new book just came out on near-death experiences, very scholarly. It's written by the medical community. And the book starts out like this. I don't know if it's an advertisement or what, but this opening of the book is this. According to recent polls, 10 million Americans claim to have had near-death experiences. Now, those definitely aren't evidenced. Some of them could be lying. Some of them could have dreamt. Some of them could have been on drugs. Okay. But 10 million are a lot of experiences. And if you said to me, okay, funny man, how do you know there's a Narnia? How do you know there's a Middle Earth? How do we know there's a yellow brick road and an Emerald City? I'll say, you know what? If 10 million Americans alone claim to have been in this other world, you can't just blow it off and say you're all crazy. I'm saying, why don't you believe there's another world? Because I've never seen it. Okay, what else? None of my friends have ever seen it. Okay, that's good. But maybe you don't know any of these 10 million people. What if one of your friends had an NDE? It's not that uncommon. There's a lady in my church who had a near-death experience while she was delivering one of her children. And she didn't go to another world. She didn't meet Aslan. She stayed up by the ceiling, no evidence. She just said, I watched them working on me. And yeah, I saw a couple things in the room, and I mean, maybe something funny. I'm just making this up, but maybe one of the nurses who came in had a blue nurse's uniform on, everybody else had a white one. Just something a little bit odd. But she said, I was up by the ceiling, and I said, did it make an impression on you? And she said, it made a huge impression on me. And I said, why? And she said, because I know when something happens for me for real and I die,
there you go.
I'm not afraid. You're not afraid to die? Not at all. Why not? Been there. Been where? Now, I know I'm being silly when I say she's been to Narnia, but the point is she's been in this world that you don't have any friends that have been there, but if 10 million Americans have been there, this has had a profound effect on her life. She doesn't care that there's no evidence or that you don't believe her. And if I said to her, because I've interviewed a lot of these people, what are you more sure of? That you were up by the ceiling while your child was being born, or that you went to the supermarket last night and bought a loaf of bread? They'll usually say that I was up there. It's the most real thing that ever happened to me. And so I'll say to my friend, the one I would tell about my bass or my hole-in-one or my first child or my getting my doctor's degree, or I would say, you don't have to believe these people, but you may be passing up on the most important fact you'll ever learn about the universe, that there is an Narnia. And if there is, and the more I'm friends with them, the more I'll tease them. I'll say, it's not safe for you to go home tonight. You might get hit by a car. You really need to be thinking about what I'm talking about. And I would say that I would kind of nag them, push them the way I would push any friend.
Right.
Like, if you were a good fisherman, you'd catch a bass just like mine. Or you get a PhD, just like, we do that with our friends. Friends don't let friends drive drunk, right? And friends don't let friends not know about a reality that you found something else about. These are the things in life we pass on normally.
Thanks so much for joining us for this interview, for taking this Christ Revealed journey with us. Remember, if you haven't already, subscribe. That way you'll get notified about all the new content that's coming down the road. Comment. People want to hear from you, and then maybe you'll encourage somebody else to make a comment. If you did like it, like it so other people know that it's something good for them to watch. And finally, share this. Send links to other people that you know and care about. Costs you nothing but maybe a few seconds of your time, but might have a massive impact on their life. Anyway, really excited to be able to share this information with you. Thanks for tuning in.